Great, thank you. Well, and thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us tonight. I'm going to start by doing a simple screen share, if you don't mind, so that we can get going. We have, as you know, this evening is the eMERGE street fight, but I just want to mention very briefly, we're not going to spend an awful lot of time on this, on two other events that are coming up. The first one is coming up on Tuesday, June 23rd, and this is a seminal study that was done that we were honored to sit on the review committee of, a study that looked at what the impact would be of switching to 100% renewable, or rather 100% EVs within the GTHA, and the health impacts. It's quite an exciting study, and that's going to take place June 23rd. The other item that I want to bring up to you is, well, we've done a lot of things on EVs. We don't want to forget about slick bicycles. And we'll be running a program that's part of the Canadian Cycling Association CAN Bike program. And what this is essentially is a defensive driving course for cyclists to make you feel a lot more comfortable on the road. And on that note, I want to get right to the, I was going to say meat and potatoes. Maybe I should say tofu and potatoes. I guess it really depends on the crowd that we're talking about tonight. So let's get right into the introductions of the people that we have with us this evening. And I think I'm going to put the error there, of course. Sorry about that. That our first street fighter this evening isn't going to be here. Mike contacted us to say that he has to be in the legislature. Now, do we want to believe him? Well, I've got to tell you that the other street fighters are chomping at the bit. The fact that he's not going to be around, I don't think that he's going to know really what. Wait, Rasha, is there something going on here?
What?
I hope we're not being Zoom bombed here. What's going on?
What?
Just bear with me for a second. Just bear with me for a second.
Whoa.
Oh, look who's in the house.
Yeah, but it's the sounds of silence I am hearing.
Can you hear it?
Not at all.
Oh, I'm sorry, folks. As I said,
It's okay, Evan. I just thought that was his typical approach. He likes to shoot off his mouth, but he never says a thing.
I'm going to do this one more time. Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to do this. And for some reason, of course, the sharing is always a problem, or appears to always be a problem. Okay, guess what? I think I might have figured out the technology now. How's this?
So I want to say hi and thanks to my friends at eMERGE for putting together this EV competition tonight. And I just want to say to my three competitors that no matter how much smack you talk, you all three are lucky that I have a committee meeting going from 8:30 a.m. this morning till 9:30 p.m. preventing me from talking smack with you one-on-one, because none of you would be able to take me on in a one-on-one debate. So I want to know which one of the three of you slipped a bribe to the government house leader, ensuring that I'd be in a committee meeting tonight so you wouldn't have to take me on one-on-one. Now, I know all three of you have been talking a little smack about the fact that my EV has gas backup, but I think you're just jealous that I'm the leader of a political party that gets to travel all over this province to rural and remote parts of the province, talking about how important EVs are to Ontario. And it's not my fault that we have a premier that's ripped up all the EV charging stations across Ontario. But I can tell you this, that when I'm premier of Ontario, we'll have EV charging stations all over this province. So everyone, even premiers, can travel the province in a fully electric vehicle. And I know the three of you talk a tough game, But I'll say this, I don't think any one of you can claim what I can claim, that I'm the only one here tonight who's actually passed a piece of legislation at Queen's Park receiving royal assent to support EV owners. So the next time you show up and you're iced and a non-electric vehicle is parked in your electric vehicle charging spot, and you can call in the parking authorities and issue a fine for that car icing you, you have one person to thank on the stage tonight, and that's me, the guy that got that bill passed. So you can talk all the smack you want. This guy's delivered for electric vehicle owners. By the way, while we're talking electric vehicles, Phil Alt, what's up with you being photographed with a two-stroke chainsaw picture? Do you understand how implooding two-stroke engines are? If you were truly an EV aficionado, you'd be carrying around an electric chainsaw, not that two-stroke thing that's spewing out pollution. So get with it, my friend. And James Gordon, James, I know you're a folk singer and all, but the boots, the cowboy hats, you're suggesting to me that you're more about riding horses than you are electric vehicles. And I can guarantee you that your EV doesn't have near the horsepower that my EV has. So I will be leaving you in the dust, my friend. And Leanne, what's up with that high leg kick in your photo? Don't you know how short James is? I mean, he's got to be one of the shortest, Paul. He's even shorter than me. So I think you got to lower that leg kick if you're going to have any effect in intimidating these EV drivers. And Leanne, what's up with the patch on your eye? I mean, that's dangerous driving around a car with that false patch on, unless, of course, your EV is one of those self-driving EVs. Anyway, I want each and every one of you to know that you're so lucky that I'm not there tonight. And to my friends at eMERGE, thank you for all the great work you do promoting electric vehicles. And thank you for declaring me the champion of our EV street fight tonight.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like Mike's street Zoom bombed us. If not, any of you have never been Zoom bombed before, we were just Zoom bombed by Mike. And let me make it very clear that eMERGE is a nonpartisan organization, and we did not declare Mike Schreiner, MPP, the winner of this debate tonight. That's still to be determined. And let me go really quickly through and introduce the other speakers this evening. And let's see, we make this, we'll figure out this technology eventually. And there's what's his name, whatever his name is, I don't know. He says he's in the legislature right now, but I don't know. Cass earlier seemed to think that he's probably on a golf course somewhere. And then, of course, there's James Gordon. James Gordon is a councillor for Ward 2, and his friend in the back seat. We're not quite sure what that's all about. And I still don't know what the heck is going on with that bib that he's got on this thing. It's beyond me. And then, of course, there's Leanne Piper with her pink boxing gloves. Like, who knew pink boxing gloves? I'm not quite sure about those things. And finally, Phil Alt will be the last street fighter. It's going to be really quite interesting tonight because Mike isn't here, and he's dropped the gloves, he's dropped the gauntlet, and on that note, I want to introduce our moderator for this evening. Our moderator is the retired Superior Court Justice, Ontario Superior Court Justice, and he still is very involved from a community standpoint and also with the justice system by being involved with the committee's name always escapes me, but it's a very important committee that works with people that are unable to make their own decisions, and that if I've got that right, Cass, that's the type of thing that he and his colleagues have to make decisions on. But it's quite an admirable task that he's doing even in retirement. The interesting thing about Cass is that when I first met him, he said to me, he said, "You look really familiar." And I said, "Yeah, you look really familiar too." At which point he said, "Didn't I throw you in jail once?" And no kidding, he actually said that. And my response to him was, which time, Cass? On that note, I'd like to hand it over to Cass Harold, who will be our moderator tonight. Cass, it's over to you.
Yes, thanks very much, Evan. First of all, I just want to tell you all I was extremely disappointed in Mike's diatribe just a few minutes ago. You may have noticed that he used the word bribe early on in his speech. Mike and I were neighbors, next door neighbors, until just recently, and we used to pretend that we liked each other. And we did have a chat not too long ago, and he asked how he could possibly make sure that he would be successful in this debate, and refused to discuss the matter any further with him. But I'm disappointed that he didn't at least mention me in his opening comments. We've gone through just very quickly with all of the street fighters, the rules. And Evan, do you want me to go through those, or were you going to do that?
If you wouldn't mind, you're the rules guy, Cass.
Okay, great. First of all, we randomly selected the order of speakers. There's going to be, if we have the time for it, 7 questions put to them, and then if there's even more time, questions from the audience that's joined us very kindly this evening. And the order in which they will answer those questions will vary, but we did it randomly to start. So Phil Alt will be the first person to answer the first question. James Gordon, I think, yes, he will. He'll be the second person to answer. And Leanne Carroll Piper will be the third person to answer. It will then sequentially change so that James will start and Leanne. I hope that's not me making that noise. They each have 90 seconds to give their answer in that order. At the end of the 3 answers, they will have an opportunity, if they wish, to use a wild card. Each of the 3 combatants has 2 wild cards, and the wild card simply enables them to rebut one of the other 2 people or both of the 2 people, however they want to use that wild card. They have 2 of those, so they'll have to be very careful about how they use them early on. They don't last forever. And they will have 90 seconds in which to answer that question as well. To rebut. I'm just looking at my notes here, and each of the 3 combatants will have a live mic. And guess we shouldn't talk about a live mic. We found out that he's not with us tonight. A live microphone. We used to think he was a live wire, and there he is bowing out at the last minute on us.
Good one.
We'll keep each of them with their live microphone so that there's some semblance of an open debate, which we would have loved to have been able to have, but in this time of our pandemic, we can't. And they can raise a point of order if they wish, or I can, or Rasher can, or Evan can. And the points of order that we can permit, first of all, if a street fighter goes over his or her 90-second limit, if the street fighter brings up a wholly new topic in rebuttal, we all know what it is. Don't use it to start something else. And if a street fighter, and this one I'm sure we're going to see a lot of, unfortunately, behaves aggressively or disrespectfully, I have no doubt we're going to see a ton of that. And you can raise the point of order if you wish to do so.
Who you now, calling aggressive?
Yeah.
Not you, Phil.
Well, a point of order already. I've never seen Phil restrict his remarks to 90 seconds in his life, so I don't know how that's going to work.
Rasha will make sure that he does this
Okay.
time. We do have the opportunity to turn off the microphone, or even, and this is like the capital punishment, we can actually turn off the video for that person.
Oh,
Never known a politician who wants to go off the screen, so I think we'll have some control. And I think with that, Evan, have I covered everything that I should cover at the beginning?
Yes, yes, you did, Cass. The only other thing to just for the Street Fighters is that Rasha will be counting down from 90 seconds. Each of the responses and the rebuttals are 90 seconds. She
Right.
will show the first one will be at 40 seconds and 45 seconds, and you'll see that it's white, and then it goes down to 30. And then it turns from there to white again at 20, and at 15, if you can hold it a little higher, Rasha, it turns yellow. If you want to hold that up higher there, Rasha, so they can see it. There we go. So it goes right down to red, which is at 5 seconds, and at that point, the Cass will cut you off. That was it, Cass. I think otherwise you've caught all the pieces. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, then why don't we get on with what the people who have been kind enough to join us really came for, and that's to hear from the people that know all about these things. So, and I've canvassed with the Street Fighters, and they've permitted me, as long as it's equal rights, to all refer to each other by first names. It's just a lot easier for all of us. So, Phil, come on into the ring, and let's hear from you for 90 seconds.
Why, thank you very much, Judge Kaz. Before I get going, I do want to thank you and Rasha and Evan very much for this evening. I also want to thank somebody who's not there, a woman named Morgan, who dropped off a couple of cookies to me today. But I'm not certain whether I could eat them because I know she's very close to Mike Schreiner, and I'm not certain what's in them. I'm sure that they could be green, but it's not the kind of green that I want. The other thing that I want to state quite seriously, that none of the three of us are here representing council. This is not an endorsement by council. We are here as volunteers believing in green energy and believing in electric vehicles. I think that's important. Similarly, I won't state this for James and Leanne, but I am certainly not endorsing any manufacturer of a car, although I love my car and mine is best. With that, I just want to point out that Mike Schreiner's not here, not because of a bribe, but because he's a revoltant owner of a Volt. And he decided to bolt. And he's just a soulless kind of a cad. And he's just gone down the highway, and his trash talk is not going to stay good with me. He might be green, but that talk was just plain mean. I'm not going to take it from Schreiner. He's nothing but a whiner. He might as well stay in Toronto in that parking lot that he's in, because he can't street fight. He's in a parking lot of a mall where he's secretly a consumer.
Thank you. James, your opening statement, please. Thank you.
all right. My car is a very, very, very fine car with batteries, not gas. It's the cat's ass, and it goes really fast. Don't tell the cops. It's a Chevy Bolt, and not Mike's wimpy Volt. If you have to have an auto, get a Bolt, that is my motto. It's got lots of storage space. It's not the color of Donald Trump's face like Phil's. He's such a pill. Mine's the best color. It's Cajun red. Fold the back seats, it makes a bed. It will. My car is cheaper than a Tesla by far. The price tag's not too scary. It's really quite proletariat like me. Their cars are very, very inferior cars when compared to mine, which is, of course, as fine as cars can be. So vote for me.
Thank you, James. Leanne, sorry you had to follow that, but you're up to bat.
Yeah, well, that's no surprise that James is singing. I mean, the last time I saw James in concert, he said he was unplugged. First of all, I also want to say it's a real shame that Mike Schreiner has traded in his hybrid for a Ford Focus. That's awkward. But thank you to eMERGE for this forum for a friendly rumble. I mean, I don't have a professional speechwriter like some politicians, so I'm hoping I can keep this all under 90 seconds. And speaking of 90 seconds, that's really about my time limit to have to listen to Councillor Ault and Councillor Gordon without feeling revolted, bolting from the room. So that's a good time limit. But I'd like to
You're so
start off
there,
by
Carl.
reminding. I'd like to start off by reminding my esteemed adversaries that I was the first among all of you to purchase an EV. I don't want to call you copycats, but that's quite a trail of kitty litter behind you. But really, we're doing this because we care about the environment. You know, I don't remember seeing any of you guys at the Speed River cleanup in 1980 when I was 16. I mean, I know Mike was still at the back at the farm in McKinney, Kansas, driving a Massey Ferguson Canadian-made tractor. But I regress. We're not here to talk about tractors. You're going to use big words like horsepower and torque and range. But if you don't have soul, you ain't got nothing.
Thank you, Leanne. This is the time when you can actually, if you wish to, use a wild card. Do any of the three street fighters wish to use a wild card to rebut opening statements of any of the others? Or shall we go on to the first formal question? Yes, first question? Good, all right. And the order, as I say, will change sequentially. So James will lead off, and then Leanne, and then Phil. And James, I'll ask you, and then the others, why did you choose to buy an EV?
Well, I'll just tell you, thanks. I chose to buy an EV because I wanted to be the most righteous dude on the block, which you all know I am anyway. Outside of my side hustle as a city councilor, as you are aware, I'm a huge international rock star. So I travel a lot to my gigs, or did before gigs became extinct recently. I realized that with an EV, I'd save over $3,000 a year in gas. And so long as there was a proliferation of fast charging stations, I could do it, which there would have been if it wasn't for Doug Ford in Ontario. So I'm ahead of the curve on that, which is expected of us all as visionary leaders. I chose an EV because around climate change matters, we're expected to be role models. And I can actually fit 3 leggy models in the back seat of my car, which is common in the show business. Travel is an essential part of my gig, so I need to find a way to lower my footprint, size 7.5, by the way, in order to perform songs of transformation and environmental inspiration without being a hypocrite. I figure the slightly bigger investment will pay for itself in 5 years, and this car will last many years, so I'd have money to spare to squander on more guitars.
Thank you, James. Leanne, why did you buy an EV?
Well, lots of reasons. First of all, I wanted to set a good example for Phil and James, and it looked like I did because they followed in my footsteps. But you know what? It was really important to me to set an example for the community as well. You know, choosing an EV is a real process, and so I did all my homework. You know, unlike my colleagues often at council who don't do their homework, I researched this. I went to the Plug and Drive in Toronto. One of the things I was really important to me was having a little bit of headroom and legroom, and I know it wasn't a big factor for James. How tall are you, James? And it wasn't a big factor for Phil or Mike either. But I just want to point out that I've got 1.6 inches more headroom than my esteemed adversaries have in their bolts, and 1.9 inches more shoulder room than the bolts. Obviously, I have broader shoulders than my gentlemen colleagues. You know, so other than that, the fuel efficiency, saving money, all the reasons that one have come to realize are better for the environment. That's why I wanted to set a good example for the community and for my children and grandchildren. I just like to point out I had my first grandchild in January, and her initials are Evie.
Oh,
For the kids, for the next generation, boys.
Thank you, Leanne. All right, and Phil, why did you choose to buy an EV?
Well, I chose to buy one because I believed it was the right thing to do. This will be the last car that I will ever buy, but also I decided to buy it so that I could put my chainsaw in the back and without powering it up, go over to Shriners, go over to Karan's, go over to Gordon's, and slowly hack away at them with a chainsaw that has no fuel in it. And just imagine the joy of my pain as a consequence of that. The one thing I also want to point out, Judge, is that Karan used her soulless soul, and by the way, it's soul like as in the bottom of your feet soul, to move to the better ward, Ward 3, because she knew that that's where the people were that really had environmental sensitivities. I don't want to be driving a money spewing, gas spewing money sink anymore. I want to drive a car because I can't always use a bus or use my bike. Sometimes I have to be realistic about those things. But the best thing about this is, I got to tell you, I can drive all the way up to the provincial parks like Kilbear, whereas the soulless soul can barely get you to Fort Erie without having to stop for a lousy coffee.
Thank you very much for that. Do any of you wish to use a wild card in response to and rebutting one or more of your Street Fighters? No, you're all saving them. Good for you. Okay. I don't know P-Flood, but I'm not terribly familiar with this system, but I see we have chats going on from time to time. I've been watching them. P-Flood is clairvoyant. His chat was, why don't you tell us which type of EV you drive? That's part and parcel of this question. So, Leanne will be the first one to answer the question. And the question is, why did you choose this particular EV and what is it? Leanne?
Okay, thanks for that opportunity. I am driving a Kia e-Soul. So I went to the Plug and Drive center in Toronto and drove a whole bunch of different test models. I wasn't looking for bright fancy colors, orange or blue, or anything with a cute name like Volt or Bolt the Disney dog. I was looking for a workhorse, something reliable and a known brand that would have replacement parts made here in Guelph at Denso. Talk about local. I was also looking for trunk space. I didn't want anything that would stand out. I'm not the pretentious type. I wanted a Kia Souls are already on the road. It's an existing model. So replacement parts are available. Key features, regenerative braking, huge. So I can drive in the city. It doesn't matter what range I have. Every time my foot is not on the accelerator, I'm generating electricity back into the battery. Rebate was a big factor as well, but not so much, because I'd like to point out that my price tag was about $2,000 less than the Bolt and quite significantly less than the Volt. So more affordable option. Those are my reasons. I mean, let's talk about design. I mean, it's a pretty cool looking car. And like I said, torque and horsepower, these guys are going to use that as their argument, but ain't got soul.
Thank you, Leanne. Phil, what vehicle do you drive and why did you choose that particular EV?
Well, I have a Chevy Bolt, and I've got to say that the only Torque that I know is Peter Torque of the Monkees, and he doesn't matter because he's not in my car. But I bought this car for one very simple reason. My wife told me that my days of driving hot sports cars like a Tesla are over. I need a practical car that I can go camping in. I can put my bike in. I can put my gasless chainsaw in when I go over to torture somebody at their house. I've got a car that actually can move me virtually anywhere and quite reasonably. Just like the Soul, I have regenerative braking. And I will admit that also, because I am fairly frugal, and that's why we try to balance city budgets, I also took advantage of a rebate. And I too am ashamed of Doug Ford for having canceled that. This was a great thing for consumers to have. We subsidize every gas car on the roads by a thing called the oil sands. This is a minor rebate. So this was something that, to me, because it was made in North America, that because it was really quite a functional vehicle, and because I could take my chainsaw where I needed to, that I thought, I'm going to buy this Bolt, and I'm going to bolt out of here soon because I got 15 seconds left.
Thank you very much. And who started that, Phil? James.
Yes, I too have a Chev Bolt. They call me Flash Gordon, so Bolt seemed to suit. I got this particular model because I needed to maximize the storage space to accommodate my gear for gigs, and needing to preserve my reputation, I needed something classier than a Kia Soul that looked like it was made out of Playmobil. Although I would imagine that you would get free admission to Legoland with that car too, though, Leanne. I needed affordability, a good range, and besides, my dealer called up, this is a true story, and said that despite the really long waiting list for the Bolt, because it's clearly so desirable, there was a cancellation and I could get mine that day if I was comfortable with Cajun red, which of course is the color that rocks the most, which would mean I'd get mine before Phil got his because he had ordered his first, but because he was waiting for some bourgeois extras on his, I got mine first.
Cue jumper.
Thank you, James. Okay, does anyone wish to use one of their two wild cards to rebut either of the other combatants or both of them? No, you're all hoarding, are you? Okay.
Don't need no
good.
stinking wild cards.
Yeah. All right. So the next question, which Phil will answer for us first, is what technical issue sets your EV apart from the others?
Well, it's interesting. I've got to say that probably that all three of us here are set apart from the guy that was too scared to show up with his petroleum-based dinosaur, Mike Schreiner, and that's regenerative braking. And we can go a long, long way without ever once stopping at a gas station. I am so proud that I have not taken advantage of any commercial charging station since, I would say, last summer when I recharged on my way back from Killbear after a camping trip. That to me is the best one. And I'll tell you as well that one of the things that I think we all will agree on, and that we can also be quite proud of as we overlook the city's budget, is the fact that our cars actually can run for about 75 cents a day, which is no small feat. Even in an era when gas prices are going down, our cars are still that cheap and economical to run. So really, more than anything else, the upfront costs, they are higher, I admit that, and that's why the subsidy for me was fairly important to keep. But when it comes to the running costs, our cars are a great deal, not just for the environment, but for the consumer.
Yes, thanks, Phil. James?
2 words, heated seats.
Is there anything left to run the vehicle if you put on your heated seats?
That sucks it up pretty much.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Leanne, what technical issue sets your EV apart from the others? Leanne, did you hear me?
I didn't. Can you hear me?
I do now, yes. Okay, people never listen
Sorry,
to
I
me, though, Leanne. That's all right. No one ever listens to me. What
I have
tech?
an incoming
Go
phone
ahead.
call at the same
Oh.
time. Oh, thank you. Technical issues. Well,
Yeah.
heated seats. Man, I can't have to say my heated seats are real selling features as well on my Soul. But also cargo capacity. Turns out I have way more trunk room than the Bolt. So while Phil is going around on his Texas Chainsaw Massacre and James is trying to put rigging for his gigging in his trunk. I've got a wide open, compact, almost like a subcompact SUV. It's got loads of cargo capacity, height and leg room. But, you know, regenerative braking is one thing. You got to have some acceleration too. So I just want to point out that my 291 pound per foot off the line acceleration, it's got so much get up and go, beats that Bolt. Bolt only has 266, by the way. Sole, top safety pick rating from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. And I'm sure, Judge Harold, you would appreciate that safety rating. The Bolt Evie even fails to meet the top safety pick standards of the Insurance Institute for Highway Traffic Safety. So there you go. It's all in the numbers.
Thank you, Leanne. And do any of you wish to rebut? Use your wild card to rebut. I'm not sure you heard that question. I'm hearing an echo from myself. Do you all the combatants hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. And do any of you wish to use a wild card to rebut?
No.
No. Okay. All right. And then James, you'll lead off on the next question, which sort of focuses in a little more on your preferences. And I'm sure, Amanda, that's nearest and dearest to all of your hearts. The question is, what environmental issue sets your EV apart from the others, James?
I think the main factor which makes the Bolt so much superior to the Soul is its range. It gets about, I was visiting my northern palace the other day, which is 200 kilometers from here. I made it there and back without charging. It can get 400 kilometers if the weather's good. About half that in a Canadian winter, but that's still a lot. And that means usually if I'm traveling to a gig, I can get there with one fast charge in the middle. I can be in any of the urban centers in Ontario where my extensive fan base resides. And I think the advantage environmentally to that is I think I've had to rent a car once on my touring schedule, but it'll cover that distance and make up for the lack of charging stations. We're still suffering in Ontario, but there are a lot of other places, especially the Maritime provinces and Quebec, that are ahead of the curve that way.
Thank you, James. Yes, and Leanne, what environmental issues set your EV apart from the others?
Well, how did I know that James was going to bring up range? Is it the cowboy hat? Home on the range. Judge Harold, what I did is I did a driving audit before I bought an EV. And so I actually mapped where I was going, and over 95% of all my driving was local. So if I'm going further afield, if I'm going 200 kilometers, I'm taking the bus, I'm taking the train, or I'm carpooling. So the long range wasn't an issue for me. I think what was most important is that when you are out not taking transit, biking, or walking, that you actually want to be seen driving your car, unlike the revolting Bolt or the Bolt that makes you just want to run away. I enjoy driving. I like the fact that people see me driving and they see that it's a green vehicle and they go, oh, I've got a Kia Soul. I didn't know it came in an electric vehicle. They like the Kia Soul already. It's a great car to just drive around locally, and that's the environmental benefit is that you're still using public transit, you're still using interregional transit, you're still carpooling, you're still using the train. You're not always in your electric vehicle.
Thank you, Leanne. And Phil, what environmental issue sets your EV apart from the others?
You know, Judge Kaz, I don't know why these two people hate each other so much. I think it's time for us to start to feel the love for everyone who has an electric vehicle. And that even includes Mike the Waffler. And I mean that quite seriously. Anybody that has an electric vehicle is somebody that is contributing to finding improvements to some of the environmental degradation that has occurred as a consequence of the petrochemical industry. So I'm sympathetic to Mike, despite the fact that his car has a little bit of gas that it has to use occasionally. Anybody that gets themselves an electric car, who believes in a hybrid, who believes in fuel cell technology, that wants to make this world better, is really in so many ways contributing positively to a better future for us all. And that's something I think that we can all celebrate. So what I really want to do is impress upon people that while, you know, the Bolt, along with our favorite god Thor, is maybe superior to the other cars, we don't mind the lesser gods and those who really want to share in the change being with us. So let's feel the love while we understand that the Bolt is best.
Thank you for that. Any use of wild cards to take on your call?
Yes, I think I need to use one of mine now for that. I find it very unfair that Phil would play the lovey-dovey card in the middle of a street fight. It just doesn't fit the mold at all, and it's sucking up to the judge in a major way too. So I object to that.
Oh, I've got to use one of mine now. I can't believe it. But Ungloved Gordon brings in a guitar, starts playing Kumbaya for us, makes us want to have the sympathy for the guy with the guitar and being the big rock star. Come on, man. It's about time you changed your shirt. Get a new car.
Leanne, anything to say to those fellas with use of a wild card?
Uh-oh.
Oh, she's frozen.
She's frozen.
Or we shocked her, James.
Yeah.
She was trying to read your lips and it didn't work. So, all right, Leanne, I guess we don't have to use one of your wild cards then, but you're going to be the next speaker, number one. So we better make sure we've got her on. She's going to reconnect, I think. And you're now mute.
She's moving.
You're muted, Leanne.
You're muted. Oh.
We can now, you can hear us now, Leanne?
I think she's frozen again.
I think she's frozen again. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that long winter trapped in that drafty car.
I think Karan met her Waterloo Avenue.
Oh.
I wonder, Leanne, do you hear us? Shake your head if you can at least hear us.
She's
No,
frozen.
She's frozen.
No. That's right. I guess if she's frozen, she couldn't even shake her head. That's right.
Oh.
Oh, she's going to try and.
There she is again.
Yeah.
But her mic's off again.
You're muted. There you are.
So you heard nothing I said?
Nothing. All
Wow.
your good stuff.
All I said was I came here. There's too much love, this kumbaya, you guys. Like, I came here for a battle of wits.
Yeah.
You appear unarmed. Even in a battle of wits, a sharp tongue is no indication of a keen mind. You know, inferiority complex is completely justified. And lastly,
Uh-oh.
Oh, dear.
Leanne, somebody just.
You know, James, I think she's getting advice. She's turning this off.
Yeah.
She just, we just got a message on the chat that she's been iced. So
Right.
that's how she's become frozen, I guess.
Does someone have the capacity to text her so that she knows she's not on? Evan's thinking of that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, I think she knows.
There.
There she is again.
Oh,
I guess my words are more powerful than I expected them to
Right.
be, and it's sending an electrical charge through the whole Zoom infrastructure. So why don't we just go ahead?
okay.
Okay. All right, because you're the lead-off batter on this next question anyway, Leanne. And
Okay.
each of you has used one of your two wild cards. So this one is a little more practical. What economic issue sets your EV apart from the others, Leanne?
Oh, my charging time. I'm fully charged in an hour. And so having a level 3 charger, I have a level 2 at home, just not having to use as much power to charge up that battery. That the Bolt and the Bolt have longer range, but it takes too long to keep them plugged in. The other thing is very important. You know what? The Kia Soul is already an existing model of car. And that means that replacement parts and service are local and easy. They already exist. They're already in inventory. So you're not driving or importing those. And talking about local, the Kia Soul parts, Denso, local, South End. So those environmental issues, all those economic issues, all make the Kia Soul much more economical. Mine was the lowest price of all of the cars that we're talking about tonight. So definitely the more affordable vehicle of all the cars that we're looking at tonight.
Thanks, Leanne. And Phil, what do you say about the economic issue that sets your EV apart from the others?
Well, Judge Cass, it's the same issue that I think sets all EVs apart. And that is that we have to consider all the subsidies for the automobile industry in the history of Canada. Consider that every piece of road is a subsidy on the auto industry. The billions paid to GM, Ford, and Chrysler to continue to build automobiles that are based on the internal combustion engine during the crisis of 2008. The incentives that we've seen to sustain the oil sands in Alberta. These are things that all electric vehicles have in common that we should really embrace, and we should be recognizing that what we've been doing is subsidizing a dinosaur of an industry, and I don't think that the metaphor should be lost there. Every one of our cars has an economic imperative to it, and that's to save Canada money over the long term.
Thank you for that, Phil. James, your cleanup batter here. What economic issue sets your EV apart from?
Well, I have to point out to Leanne that for both Phil and I, a fast charger will get us the job done for us. Back to talking on the range there, partner. It'll get us done in half an hour. And but the Bolt does have the biggest range outside of the Tesla, but of course it's at less than half the price. And I said, as I mentioned before, about $3,000 a year in gas, which I know Schreiner is secretly guzzling on the side. And I'm extra grateful now that I didn't save up to buy a car made by a billionaire who turns out to be as greedy and self-serving as right-wing as the rest of them. So, so no General Motors comments, but it seemed better that way.
Thank you. All right. Anyone wish to use their last wild card to rebut?
Oh, I'll use my last one right now, Kaz.
Okay. Thanks, Phil.
It's a great rebuttal. James, I 100% agree with you. Thank you very much.
There's that sucking up again.
Feel the love, man. Feel the love.
Okay. All right.
Thank you much.
We'll have, just pick on my order again here. We're going to have Phil leading off. No, Leanne. No, Phil. Phil,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Phil.
Yeah.
Phil, whose choice of vehicle do you, now the word that was given to me was hate, but we're not
Terrible.
words like that around here tonight. Whose choice of vehicle do you dislike the most and why?
I can't dislike any of their choices. What I do dislike, and I would have to say in some senses hate, is the choice of the government. who still encourage people to buy gas guzzlers. I don't blame people for buying gas-powered cars. I believe that for most people, that because of the relative difference in cost of many electric vehicles, that some people can't afford to buy an electric car right now. But remember, those prices are coming down. I do blame the government for, in many respects, and the Ontario government particularly, for betraying the future by continuing to underwrite the petroleum industry and conventional automobile industry. This has to change. You know, everyone here, even 1 foot out of the water, 1 foot in the water, Schreiner has done their part by purchasing an electric vehicle. Whether you go electric, whether you go hybrid, whether you go hydrogen fuel cell, you're doing a service to the future. It's the government's decisions that I hate.
Thanks, Phil. And James, whose choice of vehicle do you dislike the most and why?
I have to say that as someone who strives for equality, I have to bring this fight evenly to all of my opponents. So I'll start with Leanne. The range in the Soul is so short that instead of a battery, she may have well just had a long extension cord. For someone who advocates for diversity, especially in times like this, she got a white car. Oh, boy. And for Phil, I'm just keep looking with horror at that promotional picture with you and that 2-stroke. It gave me 2 strokes just looking at it. But who wears grandpa shorts to a street fight anyway?
You better sleep with one eye open tonight.
And Mike, you're giving politicians a bad name by sitting on the fence on the EV issue. Is it electric? Is it gas? Just couldn't make up your mind, eh? Just couldn't decide. You're supposed to be our decision maker in chief, hedging your bets with a volt. Really?
Thank you, James. Leanne, whose choice of vehicle do you dislike the most and why?
Oh man, Your Honor, you know what? Let's face it. The Bolt and the Volt are both Chevys. And so trying to decide which Chevy to hate the most is like trying to decide between death by keel hauling or tar and feather. The last time I went in for regular maintenance for my Kia Soul, there was a Bolt owner at the counter, and he said to the service person, "Can I get a set of wiper blades for my Chevy?" And the counterman said, "Sounds like a fair trade to me." But I tend to agree about the role of the government. The role of the government is key here. And, you know, one of those famous lines, apart from the sanitation and the medicine and the education and the wine and the public order and the irrigation and the roads and the clean water and the public health, what has the government ever done for us? Well, I encourage everyone listening here tonight, we need to demand more infrastructure and more incentivization. We need the government to be a player here, and there's a benefit, community and public benefit to all. And what I worry about is that when EVs start, when the incentivization of EVs starts to roll, there's going to be a lot of cheap gas vehicles on the market. Yep. And people are going to be buying those cheap cast-offs as the industry tries to get them off their lots. So we need the government here for the next couple of years.
Thank you. Now, does anyone wish to, does anyone, that is to say those who have a wild card left, James or Leanne, either of you wish to use a wild card at this point?
Well,
no?
I hate to use the wild card to talk about color because it's a very important issue right now in our society. That being said, Phil, what color of orange are you driving? Is it a Trump orange? Is it more of a tangerine orange?
Just remember, all that's green is gold, and all that's gold is green again.
I'm just wondering about your blue, Dave. That is, I know that's like a water blue. You're like, is that a water watcher's blue, or is it more of a blue Smurf kind of blue?
Oh, it's red. It's red.
The white is not about race. It's about clean, and I'm driving clean. I'm driving green. Clean and green is where I'm at.
Thank you. All right. Now, actually, I should say, James, you still have a wild card. Did you want to use it in this context or wait for the next question?
I do not need a wild card.
We're going to count that as, no, we won't count that as a wild card. Okay. Mr. Ferrari, speaking of Mr. Ferrari, Evan, when we were chatting some time ago, first of all, why I'm directing this to you now is to see if we have any questions from our audience, which is actually a larger number than we had anticipated, as I understand it. I think it's a significant number of people that have checked in with us. When we were chatting some time ago, and I said to you, it seems to me ironic that someone named Ferrari is dealing with EVs, and you put me in my place. Do you want to just very briefly tell the folks about that?
Well, oddly enough, I think what you're talking about is the fact that technically I've never owned a car. And I, through the years when I worked in the corporate sector, I had leased vehicles that the company owned over that period of time. And currently our car is in my partner's name. It's in her name. But it's quite bizarre that regardless of the fact that my last name is indeed a car, that my main mode of transportation is a bicycle or I walk most of the time. We live close enough to downtown Guelph. And the car that we do share is indeed a hybrid. It's a small Prius. But the implications with EVs is quite exciting from the standpoint that not only is there an environmental benefit, but there's a real economic benefit to the people that are involved with it. And I have to say that to the people on this call that after many people talked about the rebates coming off, many of our street fighters, and once they came off in 2018, there was a drop in Ontario significantly in sales. But because of all of the events that all of you have been coming to and the buzz that we've been creating out there, while Ontario only saw a 105% increase in EVs, Guelph saw a 172% increase in EVs. So we're pretty excited about all the EV events that have helped push the envelope on that, and we couldn't have done it without all the people that are on the call tonight.
Good, thanks, Evan. Do we have any questions from the audience that we're aware of?
There's been a huge amount of chat, and they've having quite a chat all evening long. But Cam, I'm going to add someone else in on this one. We don't have a video from them, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Guelph is blessed not with 4 politicians that have EVs, but actually 5. And indeed, Mayor Cam Guthrie also has an EV. He told me himself, so I'm not saying anything out of school here. He said, I'm cheap, so I bought used. And he bought a very tiny BMW EV. And we did invite him to come out as well, but early on he made it clear that he was, as much as he really wanted to be here, that he's got a lot of COVID related issues that he was dealing with. So I got to say, I think as a community, we should be quite happy that we've got so many committed politicians of all different political stripes that are supportive of EVs. And our intention tonight was to help help normalize the concept of EVs and have a bit of fun at the same time.
Great. Well, thanks, Evan. I'm going to throw in a question then, if I may. Our son, who we both were responsible for him, our son doesn't live in Ontario any longer. He lives in a province, might as well stay nameless. It's somewhere between Saskatchewan and British Columbia. And he told me that people there refer to EVs as coal-powered vehicles. And I don't know if you've heard the term, and if you've heard it, whether you have any comment on why it should or shouldn't be referred to that way. And thanks, buddy, for the question. So just looking for my order again, but I think it's James. Yes, James, you're up to bat.
Well, it would be typical of residents of that province to look for ways to diss electric vehicles, because of all the provinces, they are slaves to big oil more than anyone else. whenever I travel there, which I do about once a year, you can meet the most seemingly environmentally conscious activist people, and they will still fight to the death for their tar sand oil because there's generations of jobs there. They have to justify it somehow. They have to build the narrative that there's something wrong with EVs. And I'll just tell a quick story about that. When I looked for my EV, the dealers didn't want to sell me one. It was a loss. They were trying to look like they were environmentally friendly, but they don't get the maintenance. There's almost no maintenance cost. There's only 23 moving parts in my car. So they really didn't want to, because they're slave to that system too. A number of United States have banned electric cars because they're even more slaves to that system.
Thanks, James.
So I'll attempt to answer that as well. I'm a coal miner's granddaughter, and Drumheller, Alberta. Coal is dead there, and the energy world is transforming. I have a cousin and an uncle who once worked on the rigs, but now are transitioning to clean energy jobs, retraining for clean energy. So they know the future. The important thing in Ontario is we no longer have coal-fired electric plants, and because of that, electric vehicles in Ontario are not coal-powered vehicles. Lastly, there is a way where you can make your electrical generation clean and green as well. Our household signed up for bullfrog power to cover all of. We can't generate the solar or wind on property, so we're signed up for bullfrog. So we know that the plug in the electric vehicle, when we plug it in, is coming from clean energy. So there's a way to do it even in an urban situation. You can still ensure that when you plug in your electric vehicle, it's clean.
Yeah, I do want to hear from Evan after I make a couple of remarks. I think those are very good points made by both James and Leanne. There are a couple of other concerns that I have. One is that, first of all, I believe it's a red herring. What we're dealing with in Ontario is an absence of coal-fired energy. Where our problem exists is that we've got a problem with nuclear energy, and I admit to that. It is here. The problem that we also have is that after we are out of peak hours, and that's debatable right now, in fact, we have a situation where we have surplus power that we sell to other consumers at, if I'm correct, I think less than a penny a kilowatt hour right now. Well, Ontario, the cost for producing this, if you take into consideration the disposal of nuclear spent fuel and so on, is about $1 per kilowatt hour. Now, this is absurd. Now, the one thing I will say is I have solar panels on my house as well, and I believe in renewable, and ironically, so does Alberta, where I believe that we have a larger proportion of wind and solar power than anywhere else in Canada. Evan, you might need to correct me on that stat, but I think it's up there quite significantly.
May I, Cass?
James has a wild card. Do you wish to use it?
No, thanks.
Okay. Evan?
Certainly. So, Buddy, thanks for joining us all the way from Alberta. I can see your smiling face with your sunglasses on there in your picture. And thanks for the question, because, you know, all kidding aside, I think it's a really important question to discuss and understand the implications. The actual math on coal burning jurisdictions, or jurisdictions where there's a heavy reliance on fossil fuels compared to someplace like Ontario, regardless of the nuclear, we have a relatively decarbonized grid. Even in Alberta, a cradle to grave analysis, so all the energy that went into building the car to the time that it actually gets recycled at the other end. If you compare an electric, including the batteries, including all the gasoline that goes into a car, including all the energy that goes into the manufacture of those two vehicles, it's still better in Alberta with a highly fossilized electrical grid. It's still better in Alberta from an environmental perspective. Marginally, and I'll put it into context, In Ontario, if you switch from a gas car, an average gas car, not a truck or something that's even gas guzzling, so this is relatively small stuff, it's 4 tons of CO2 emissions you remove. If you do that exact same switch in Alberta, it amounts to a few hundred kilos, so not even 1 ton. But it's still better. And what's happening to the Alberta grid, as I think it was Phil mentioned, is that there's a lot more solar going up and there's a lot more wind going up, regardless of what's happening with the fossil industries, because they're actually cheaper than new coal. They're actually cheaper than new nuclear facilities. So at the end of the day, well, yeah, I mean, there are jurisdictions that have a lot of fossil fuels, but it's still better because the electric motor is so much more efficient than a gas burning or an ice burning vehicle, internal combustion engine.
So are we about at the stage of doing the ballot? Do we want to give everyone, I think there's only 3, so it'd be easier to do, a 90 second wrap up, and if we do, I've got the nod from our boss here. Thanks, Evan. Leanne, you're up to bat to wrap it up in 90 seconds or less as you wish.
Okay. I'm not going to take any swipes in my final roundup. You know, there's the old saying, how do EV owners drive? One hand on the wheel and the other hand patting themselves on the back. And I think we have to be careful, and we need to understand that electric vehicles are just one form of transportation. We need to electrify our transit fleets, our buses, our trains. We need to be carbon free in all forms of transportation. Active transportation, much more investment in active transportation. We wouldn't even need to get into our vehicles if we had better active transportation networks in this city and throughout Ontario. So EVs, yep, absolutely. If you require a car and you are making a choice, EV is absolutely the way to go in the province of Ontario. We need more infrastructure to support it. We need to vote accordingly and make sure we get that infrastructure through all levels of government. But I want to thank everyone for participating in this forum. You know, Phil and James, I know this has all been fun. It's been great sparring with you, and we'll save our next round for council chambers.
All right.
Thank you, Leanne. Phil?
Thank you again, Kaz. And thanks for a great conclusion there, Leanne. I don't think we so much spar as we try to find consensus on common causes. When I was in university, I worked in both the oil sands and in the electrical industry in Alberta. And I saw the devastation of the oil sands. It was perhaps one of the more depressing times of my life. And I have to echo what Leanne has said about active transportation. Every opportunity that I could, I went hiking in the mountains. And one of our rules was, don't stand when you can sit, don't sit when you can lie down. And it's the same sort of thing with active transit. Don't take a car when you can take public transit. Don't take public transit when you can bike. Don't bike when you can walk. We can do better, and we can do even better by avoiding the blame game with consumers and the community. On the other hand, we do need to hold the government's feet to the fire. We do need to say that we are building a country for Canada and a country for future citizens of this country, because it matters. We're in the middle of an epidemic, of a pandemic right now that some people argue actually is a harbinger of environmental change, and it well might be. Let's go forward looking for the best alternatives to hydrocarbons. Electric cars are a beginning, but they are clearly not an end.
Thank you. And James, the last word goes to you.
Thank you very much, Judge. I'd like to play off what I just heard from my 2 colleagues, especially what Leanne said about, I think when I got my EV, I was smitten and was using it more often than I needed, because I live in pretty close to the downtown. I can walk, I can cycle anywhere, and I realized the reason that I own a car at all, I dream of the day, even though I'm delighted with my EV, I dream of the day when I won't need one. I need it for my business because there are still significant chunks of the country that I can't get to any other way. But if we as government representatives advocate for making sure that those gaps are filled, I would love to not have one, not have to need one. And I should say, I have to be more mindful of that as used when needed. COVID has helped actually in that one way. I have charged my electric vehicle up twice in the last 2.5 months because when I'm at home, it sits in the driveway. So that's something to aspire to. It's not the end game. It's something that we can all do as an interim solution, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to you for the voting. I understand from one of the comments that was made that people wanted us to remember, and just by bringing this to your attention, I'm afraid someone's going to think that I really did listen to that discussion with Mike using the B word that I won't repeat again. I really did hang up on him. I refused to get into it, but he is entitled to a vote based on his involvement, such as it was.
Well, thanks. Thank you. So what I'm going to do is if you haven't done this before, I'm going to launch the poll, and I will be able to tell. We won't know who it is because you'll have to trust me on this. That it is a blind vote, so I can't tell who is voting for who. And yes, indeed, Cass, we do have Mike Schreiner's name on this list. I don't know who he thinks he is. Obviously, some big shot that's got to go see Doug Ford in Toronto tonight. But in any case, I'm not trying to influence how you're going to vote too badly. But in any case, I'm going to launch the poll right now, so it should appear on your screen. And as soon as all of you have completed the response, then we'll be able to end the polling, and we'll share it with all of you. And I'm watching a bit of a horse race going on here. This is very interesting.
Soul.
We need a few more of you to vote. Keep voting, people. Some of you haven't polled yet, haven't clicked on your polling yet. Well, I guess this is sounding like a regular election. Like not everyone wants to vote. What the heck is that all about?
What about
Okay,
Chad ballots?
I think we're done. I think we've made it. So I'm going to end the poll, and I am about to share the response, and the winner is Leanne.
Oh.
Oh, look at that.
All right.
We got soul. We got soul.
Yeah, and it was the pink boxing gloves that clearly did it.
Yeah.
Well,
We're all winners if we have an Evie.
yes, you certainly are. And I'm going to give another plug to that event coming up. One of the interesting things that came out of that study, that health study that I mentioned, was that what they found was that lower income communities benefit the most from EVs from a health perspective. And that was something that truly surprised me once they actually looked at it on a community by community basis. But rather than get down in the weeds and keep you here much longer, I have to send a big, huge thank you to Cass. Cass, you've been a great support through this. I really appreciate you doing it. You did a fantastic job. Thank you. And of course, I want to thank all of the counselors who joined us this evening as well. It's been fun. We figured we'd pick some mud up and throw it at the wall and see if this was going to be fun. And I hope you'll agree that it certainly was. It wasn't the usual boring Zoom call. Granted, we messed up the technology, as most of the Zoom calls that I suspect that you're in. But once again, I'd like to thank all of you. And Cass, any last words from you?
Yes, thank you, Evan, for all the hard work you and Rasha do.
For sure.
All the time. It's much appreciated. So thank you for all.
Great. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and we hope you have a lovely evening the rest of the night. Good night.
Thanks to all of you.
All right.
Thanks for all the work.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining us as well.
Thanks.
Hey.